All right, welcome back to the last part of this full stack login system, part 3, where we will be using the front end to remember if a user has been logged in. Now, a very large caveat here is that this is a very basic setup. So normally we would be using cookies, sessions, authorization, JSON Web Tokens, any of those tools that you will be using in next web courses. But for the basis of this course, where you for the first time know what a backend is, what a backend does with a database, how database NoSQL databases work, there is so much stuff in this Web 2 course that adding cookies, sessions, OAuth, JavaScript, web tokens, everything with JavaScript is a bit too much. So we're going to do it on a very simple level that you already somehow know, somewhat know. You know what a session storage is, what a local storage is. So we're going to be using that to, every time you visit the site, you can log in and you will stay logged in as long as that session is active in your browser. So if you close the browser, it is gone. So we do not want to state the data or locate the data on our machine each time we load up our web browser, because that's not really safe. Now, if for testing purposes, if you use local storage or session storage, then of course I cannot stop you and you can do what you want. Now, we're going to be starting with generating keys. We have a backend and a front-end part. We're going to start with the backend. We're going to give every user a unique key. Now, you would say that the ID in the database is one of those keys. But a general best practice is to not use database IDs in regular logic. Because if you know that, then hackers can get into the database and do way more harm than when they have if you have a specific generated UUID. So we are going to be making our objects having a unique ID that you can play with back and forth, also to show you the UUID package for and we're gonna have a route called post verify ID, which you can do lots of stuff with, and even do more tricks in your front end with to keep your user logged in. So let's get started with step 6. We are going to go to our backend. Let's see if our server is still running. It is still running. We are going to delete this users array, which is still here from the previous steps. And I am going to add in a new package called UUID. Now, UUID is something that is even more used than the env file. It's to generate random IDs. It has a couple of versions. The one we're going to be using is version 4, random ID. How do we use it? Very easily. We install it, we require it, version 4, and we just call this function. And this will generate some type of ID like this. We're going to save that with our user, and we're going to be communicating with that as well. So let's go to our code. Let's open up the terminal. And I'm going to be npm install UUID. This allows us to add this to the top of our code. Const, I think it was v4. V4, let me quickly check the documentation. Et voila. V4. And now we can generate an ID. So where do we want to generate an ID? We want to generate one when we register a new user. Let's go here. So when we save the user here, we're going to be generating a new ID. So again, I'm going to call it UUID. And I'm going to be calling that function. I think it's called UUID v4. So UUID v4 brackets. And this will generate a new ID. Perfect. Now, this is... that's all we need to do. So we can test this by just clearing the, well, we're not going to be clearing the database. I'm just going to do a register with Harry Potter as well. Save, connection refused. Okay. It's probably because my server is broken, or it's not, yeah, it's not running. Oops. Let's try and run our server and test it. Again, I've only typed in one line, and I have saved a new user. Now, again, I did not do the duplication check, so now we have 2 Harry Potters, Harrys in our database, as we will see, and one will have a UUID. Perfect. Now I will delete my other test cases because they're not valid anymore in my use cases, because I now require every username to have a UUID. So Harry Potter is in there. Let's quickly create Mike as well. I can use my register look and feel, but this is much quicker. Save, done. And that means that now, if I refresh, I have 2 users with a unique ID. Yes, perfect. All right, now the second thing that was asked was create a route, a post route that will retrieve a user based on the ID. Okay, you can use it for multiple reasons, but we're gonna be using the login function and copy pasting that. It's quite a lot. Copy paste, because we're looking for one user there as well, so we might as well copy paste it. And we're going to be calling it verify ID. Verify ID. We're going to be checking if the ID is in the body. Again, this is a post request because we do not want to send IDs over GET. Very important. If the ID is not present, then we're going to send bad request. ID is missing. And I think we can also, I need to check this, we can somehow check if it's a valid UUID. Validate. Here. Perfect. So test to see if a string, if it's a valid UUID. And I assume that will give me back true or false. All right, we're going to do that, because if you try with ID 1, then we don't need to do the database query. We can just say, hey, that is not a valid ID. So if it's not there, else, if it's there, I'm going to check it. If UUID v4, I need to import more. Let me check. Again, I'm using the documentation version, so I'm importing validate as validate as UUID validate, and that will return validate. I'm going to validate UUID validate. Voila. And now I should be using this function. Going down. If UUID validate and rec.body.id. You know what? UUID, to make the naming convention consistent. If it's not valid, then I'm also going to send a message. So again, this returns true if it's okay, but if true turns into false, then it's incorrect, and I can bad request ID is not a valid UUID. Perfect. Again, check for empty and faulty ID. Take a pause here and try to make sure you have this part as well before we continue. All right, perfect. Now we can continue on and test this. Now, before we test this, I am going to comment everything out and maybe just do just uncomment this, so we at least have something. So I'm going to verify ID status verified. Again, you don't need to do this for now. I just want to make sure that I don't get a timeout error. So my data or sorry, my route is up and running. I'm going to add a new route in here, which is called localhost, not register, but verify ID. And if I try to do a post, it will say ID is missing. Perfect, because that is normal. Now, of course, I need to add a ID. That means UUID. And you know what? I'm going to add 1, 2, 3. Connection refused. Oof. Crashed. Let me check. Headers sent. Did something crashed? So I'm going to make it a bit bigger so that I can see the error. ID is not a valid UUID. Cannot set headers after they are been sent to the client. Of course. I'm trying to do this again. So I think after this, a return should suffice. Return safe. Let's try again. Does it crash now? It doesn't crash. Perfect. What was happening was that I was sending a response back with a header, and then I'm trying it again here. So again, once you send the response back, you should you should stop your code for continuing. Let me check quickly if I did that in the previous routes. I did not. Return. This one is fine because of if else statements. And with register also return. Okay, verify ID. That's done. And now we need to retrieve the data if it's correct and make sure that... come on. Yes. We're going to retrieve the user and just pass it back. So I don't need that. I need the users collection. I need the query where the UUID equals rec.body.uuid. We're going to find one if the user exists. We're not going to be comparing passwords. We don't need that. If the user exists, I'm going to send back verified. Your UUID is valid. And then in the data part, I will send back the user. Now, again, if I pass along the user, I will pass along everything, including the password. We don't want that. We want to pass along the ID, the data, sorry, the ID, the email, and the username. So username equals, Jesus, user.username, email, because that's the only things you need in the front end. UUID, email. App keeps crashing. Why is that? Missing catch. Yep. Okay. Whatever. We're not done yet. So if the user is found, I send the user back. If the user is not found, then we can say no user with that. No user with that UUID. Verify error. I'm going to do some templating here. No user exists with ID and then rec.body.uuid. Et voila. And we're having everything. Our verify method, it's done. So again, you have the first part. The second part would be, again, connect to the database, get the collection, set up your query, find that user, And if you have found the user, you can do the verify and or else give an error if it's needed. So again, I will give you time to, again, from here on out, make sure you have every code, starting from the try. So the try catch finally is all the same. It's inside the try statement that we have this part. And then we're on to testing. If we're on to testing, now it's not a valid UUID, which is correct. I will get the ID from Harry, and I should only get back his email, his username, and the ID itself. So, voila. Let's verified. Your UUID is valid. The data is username Harry P, the email, and the UUID. Perfect. It works. I don't think that this is a valid UUID. Oh, okay. No user exists. Okay, so it's a valid UUID because of the length, but no user exists with the ID. Perfect. And of course, if I were to redo it with number 4, we will get the correct user. This ends this type of exercise. Now you know how to provide verify ID, how to provide your requests or your objects with unique IDs beyond the Mongo database ones. So in the last part of this series, which is I think part 7, let me double check. Yes, part 7. We're going to bind this all together and make sure our front end reacts to these IDs where we can use those objects in session storage. I'll see you in the next video.